The silence after the crucifixion was not peace, it was suspension. Jerusalem breathed with contained fear, as if the entire city were waiting for something more to happen, something worse. The streets were too empty for an ordinary day, too full for a day of true mourning. People moved quickly, looked little, spoke even less. Mary Magdalene walked among them with her head covered, not out of habit, but out of necessity. Her eyes were red, swollen, but dry. There were no more tears. There was only a cold, urgent clarity. She did not go home, she couldn't. Home was no longer safe, no place was. She took secondary streets, avoiding the main square, avoiding anywhere she might be recognized. Every step was calculated. Every sound made her pause. Distant soldiers' voices quickened her heart, but her feet never stopped. She had learned something in the last 3 years. When power decides to eliminate an idea, it doesn't stop at the source. It hunts the rivers. Mary reached a small house on the city's edge. She knocked 3 times, paused, then twice. The door opened just enough to reveal a familiar face. John, the youngest, the one who had stayed until the end. He pulled her inside quickly, closed the door, locked it. The room was dark, stifling. Other people were there, sitting on the floor, leaning against the walls. Peter, James, Salome, some of the women who had followed from Galilee, all wearing the same expression, fear mixed with something they could not name. Mary didn't say good evening, didn't ask how they were. She went straight to the point. "We need to leave Jerusalem, now." Peter raised his head. He looked 10 years older than he had 3 days earlier. "Where to?" "Anywhere that isn't here. They'll come after us." Peter shook his head, not in disagreement, but in exhaustion. "We didn't do anything. We just followed." Mary felt anger, not at him, at the innocence he still carried. "Do you think that matters to them? Do you think they'll ask what each of us did?" A heavy silence fell. John stepped closer. "Mary, what do you know?" She took a deep breath. "I heard things. Soldiers talking. They have orders to identify anyone close to him. Not to arrest, to watch." "And then?" John asked. Mary looked into his eyes. "Then it depends on what they observe." The room grew even quieter. Salome stood up. "I'm not running away like a criminal. I did nothing wrong." Mary turned to her, not in anger but with forced patience. "Do you think the innocent don't die? You were there. You saw." Salome looked away. James spoke for the first time. "What if we split up? Small groups, less visible?" Mary nodded. "It's safer, but not now. Now we need to leave together. Later, on the road, each one decides." Peter finally stood. "And him? What do we do with what he taught us?" Mary felt something tighten in her chest, not sadness, responsibility. "It goes with us. It was never tied to this place, it never was." Peter looked at her as though he wanted to believe, but couldn't quite manage it. "Are you sure?" Mary didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." They prepared quickly. Few belongings, only the essentials. Food for 2 days, water, cloaks, nothing that would draw attention. Mary tucked something small inside her tunic, something no one saw, a piece of cloth stained with blood. It wasn't a relic, it was a memory, proof that all of it had been real. They left before dawn. The city was still sleeping, but not for long. They walked in silence, split into 2 small groups. Mary led the first with John and Salome. Peter followed behind with James and 2 others. They didn't speak until they were beyond the walls. The air there was colder, cleaner. For the first time in days, Mary breathed deeply. The road was long and dusty. There weren't many choices of direction. South led to the desert, north to hostile territories. West was the sea. Mary chose west, not out of logic, out of instinct. John walked beside her for hours without saying anything. Finally, he broke the silence. "Did you already know this was going to happen?" Mary looked straight ahead. "Not exactly like this. But I knew it wouldn't end well." "Then why did you stay?" "Because some things are worth more than safety." They stopped to rest at noon. The sun was at its highest, merciless. They sat in the shade of a large rock. They ate dry bread, drank warm water. No one complained. Peter approached Mary. "We need to talk." She nodded. They moved a little away from the group. Peter spoke softly. "You said you heard soldiers. What else did you hear?" Mary hesitated, not because she didn't want to say it, but because she knew the weight of the words. "They're looking for something, not just people. Something he might have left." Peter frowned. "What?" Mary looked into his eyes. "Words. Written. They think he wrote something." Peter went pale. "He never wrote anything. We know that." Mary nodded. "But they don't. And while they search, they'll keep watching, questioning, pressing." Peter ran a hand over his face. "So we're running from something that doesn't exist." Mary gave a bitter smile. "We're running from fear, and fear doesn't need a reason to kill." They kept walking. The days blurred together. Road, rest, road. They avoided large villages, stopped only in small places where no one asked questions. Mary always covered her face when entering anywhere, always paid quickly, always left quickly. John noticed she slept little. Every night she stayed awake for hours, staring at the fire, at the darkness beyond it. One night he asked, "Are you afraid?" Mary looked at him. "Every day. But I don't let fear decide for me." They reached the sea after a week. The smell of salt was strong, comforting. There was a small port there, fishing boats, merchants, people who lived off movement. It was easier to disappear there. More faces, less attention. Mary found a house belonging to a woman who rented rooms. She paid for 3 nights. The group split. Mary, Salome, and 2 other women stayed in the house. The men found shelter in a nearby warehouse. That night, Salome finally asked what everyone wanted to know. "Where do we go after this?" Mary was sitting near the window, looking at the sea. "I don't know yet," Salome insisted. "You always know." Mary turned. "No, I just decide quickly. It's different." "Is there a safe place?" Mary thought for a moment. "Maybe. North, beyond Galilee. There are communities there, people who knew him before all this. But it's far. Weeks of walking." Salome nodded. "And after? After we live, we continue. We do what he did without him being here." Mary noticed something changing inside herself. It wasn't leadership she was seeking. It was necessity. Someone had to make decisions. Someone had to keep the group together while fear tried to tear them apart. She didn't feel qualified, but she was willing, and willingness, she had learned, is sometimes more important than qualification. On the 3rd day at the port, something happened. Mary was in the market buying bread when she saw 2 men talking. They wore no uniforms, but they had that manner, that posture of men on a mission. One of them was describing someone, a woman, dark hair, traveling with a small group. Mary felt her blood run cold. She bought the bread quickly, returned to the house without looking back. She gathered everyone immediately. "We need to leave, now," Peter protested. "But we agreed on 3 nights. Mary was firm. "The plans changed. They're looking. Here." "Did they see you?" "I don't know. I'm not going to wait to find out." They grabbed their things in minutes. Mary left extra coins for the woman of the house, not out of generosity, but to buy silence. They left through the back door, followed narrow streets to the edge of the town. The northern path was harder. Mountains, rough terrain, fewer villages, but it was less watched. Mary chose the difficulty. For days they walked in silence. Fatigue began to weigh heavy. One of the women fell ill, high fever. They had to stop. Mary cared for her with herbs she knew, cold water, patience. The fever broke after 2 days, but the woman remained weak. They lost precious time. One night John approached Mary. "You're carrying something. I can see it." Mary looked at him, surprised. "What? A burden that isn't yours alone. Let us help." Mary felt her eyes burn, but she didn't cry. "I don't know if I can." "Share it." John gently held her arm. "You don't have to be strong alone. He taught us that too." Mary took a deep breath. "All right. Tomorrow we decide together." John smiled. "That's already a beginning." They reached a small mountain village 3 weeks after leaving Jerusalem. The place was so remote it barely had a name. The people there lived from shepherding, subsistence farming. They asked no questions. Mary felt they could rest there at least for a while. They found an abandoned house on the village edge. It didn't have much, but it had a roof, walls, shelter. They stayed. The days there were different. Slower, quieter. For the first time since the crucifixion, there was space to breathe, to remember without desperation, to speak of him without fear of being overheard. One night, sitting around the fire, Peter spoke. "I denied him. 3 times, just as he said I would." Mary looked at him. "I know. We all know." Peter stared at his hands. "How do I go on after that?" Mary thought before answering. By going on, by doing different, not erasing the mistake, but not letting it be the last word. Salome asked, "Do you think he knew it would end like this?" Mary nodded. "I think so. I think he saw the path and chose to walk it anyway." "Why?" "Because some truths can only be spoken with an entire life, not just with words." Mary realized something in that village. They weren't just fleeing, they were building something new. A way of continuing that didn't depend on temples, authorities, structures. It was more fragile, more human, but also more real. The villagers began to notice there was something different about the group. They didn't proselytize, didn't preach in the streets, but there was something in the way they treated one another, shared food, refused to look away from suffering. One day a man from the village approached Mary. "You're different. Where do you come from?" Mary hesitated. "From far away, very far." The man nodded. "You fled from something." Mary didn't deny it. "Yes, from something that doesn't understand what it can't control." The man looked at her with curiosity. "And did you find something better?" Mary thought about the question. "We're building. I don't know yet if it's better, but it's ours." They stayed in the village for 3 months. During that time, Mary realized the secret they carried wasn't an object, wasn't a text. It was a way of seeing the world that could not be destroyed because it didn't depend on anything external. It lived inside everyone who had chosen to look at suffering without turning away, at injustice without accepting it, at death without giving up. One day a traveler arrived in the village with news. Jerusalem was calmer. The persecutions had lessened. Power had found other targets. Peter wanted to return. Mary said no. "Not yet. It's still not safe. But more important, it's not necessary. What we need to do, we can do here." Peter disagreed. "The people there need to hear." Mary was firm. "Then go you, but don't take everyone. Don't put everyone at risk out of impatience." Peter left 2 weeks later with James. Mary stayed with John, Salome, and the others. It wasn't a bitter separation, it was pragmatic. Each following the calling they felt, each carrying responsibility in their own way. Mary watched them go without sadness, only with hope that they would be prudent. The village became home. Mary began teaching the local children, not about religion, about reading, about thinking. John helped in the fields. Salome cared for the sick with the herbs Mary taught her. They created something small but real, a space where people could be different without being destroyed for it. Years passed. Mary grew old there, not with bitterness, but with a serenity she had earned kilometer by kilometer, decision by decision. The secret she had carried from Jerusalem remained guarded, not because it was dangerous, but because she had discovered that true secrets don't need to be revealed, they need to be lived. One afternoon, now elderly, Mary sat on the same rock where she had rested during the first escape. A young woman from the village approached. "Is it true you knew a great master?" Mary smiled. "I knew a man who taught that greatness isn't in having answers, but in asking the right questions and living with the courage to follow them." The young woman sat beside her. "And he died for it?" Mary looked at the horizon. "He died because the world is afraid of people who live what they believe. But they didn't win. Because the idea continued." The young woman was silent. Then she asked, "And you? Why did you flee?" Mary thought of the answer it had taken her years to fully understand. "I didn't flee death. I fled uselessness. To die without continuing what we began would have been the only real defeat." The sun began to set. Mary rose slowly, joints stiffer now but spirit intact. She walked back to the village at a gentle pace, knowing that the secret she had carried was not in hidden scrolls or secret doctrines. It was in every step taken despite fear, in every choice to welcome instead of reject, in every refusal to let power crush compassion. Mary Magdalene did not become a martyr, did not found a church, did not write gospels. She did something far more subversive. She lived fully what she had learned, without expecting recognition, without seeking power, simply keeping alive a flame the centuries could not extinguish. And when she died, years later, peacefully in the small village that had become both her refuge and her mission, she left behind something no crucifixion could destroy, a way of loving that does not ask the world's permission to exist.